We are joined now by two of Bill Cosby's publicists, Andrew Wyatt and Ebony Benson. Thank you both for joining us. And Ebony, let me begin with you. You just heard those victims right there saying it wouldn't break their heart for Bill Cosby to spend the rest of his life in jail. Your response?
I think it's very interesting that she chose words such as massive man, especially when she gave in her testimony that her and her friend Judy were actually on their way because they enjoyed big black men. And again, in Janet Baker Kenny's testimony, she talked about getting effed up and sleeping with Bill Cosby. Again, we're talking about accusations that have not been followed up with any evidence besides what our defense attorneys did. There was evidence completely, blatantly, selectively overlooked by the Commonwealth in this situation. Again, women who knew who this man was, they had an agenda, they sought their agenda, and then years later come with accusations because they woke up and saw someone on TV. Again, of course they would feel that way. Of course they would feel that they want him to spend the rest of his life in jail because that's been the agenda that they set out with from the beginning.
A jury of Bill Cosby's peers looked at all the evidence, decided he was guilty of those crimes. Andrew Wyatt, where is Mr. Cosby this morning? How's he feeling? His reaction?
And just to follow up on that, you said a jury of his peers. They also had a huge amount of prejudice and bias by having 5 women also testify to crimes which he was not on trial for. Go ahead.
And you asked me how's Mr. Cosby. Mr. Cosby is right now with Mrs. Cosby. He's feeling great. He's confident. He's not going. Although he has been found guilty, he's innocent of these charges, and he maintains his innocence. And he's going to walk around as a man who's innocent because he didn't do anything wrong.
What, George, you say he's comforted. What is he comforted by?
He's confident because he didn't do anything wrong. These are allegations. They're decade-long allegations, George. These women have no evidence. They went to no authorities. They parade these 5 distractors in to tell stories and talk about the drug habits they had. You have Lisa Lott Lublin, who said, I don't even remember if anything happened to me. I think these jurors got it wrong. You had juror number 11, George, who said before the trial started that Mr. Cosby was guilty, and why why even waste our time? Let's just find the man guilty. He said it to 3 other jurors.
Our defense attorneys fought hard to make sure that that juror did not end up in that box, and yet and still you had a person with a 100 complete bias sitting there, not interested in any evidence that was presented by the defense. So yes, they heard evidence, but a bias was already there.
Hold on a second. Some 60 women have accused Bill Cosby of various indiscretions of sexual harassment. You're saying all these women, all 60 women are lying?
May I ask a question? Since when are all people honest? And since when are all women honest? We can take a look at Emmett Till, for example. Since when are all people honest?
Well, and George, this became a public lynching. What they did, what Gloria Allred was able to do, she took a salt and pepper shaker. She shaked out a lot of salt and sprinkled in a little black pepper. And the South came east, and that's what we saw. The sheer volume of people coming forward, that's what they did in order to persuade public opinion.
And 60 women coming forward, where are the 60 criminal charges? Where are those charges? Yes, these women have allegations, but where is the evidence? Where's the proof? Where have they gone to authorities? Where have these authorities found that it was sufficient evidence to pursue a case?
The jury looked at all that. Excuse me. The jury looked at all that. They made their decision. Thank you both for your time this morning.
So we're talking a lot about what happened in Paris and the situation in North Korea. Oh. You tweeted something that was another controversial topic. It's good. It's good that you're coming back to work on Friday because you said last month Bill Cosby's lawyer keeps saying the stories are old and discredited, and we know what stories you're referring to, except nobody remembers the part where they were discredited. It's unusual for a comedian to go after another comedian.
I never thought he was funny. I mean, that's the beginning of it. I know, really.
Is that true?
Absolutely true.
Really?
Right. I have a list of people who never made me laugh. Danny Thomas, Red Skelton. I could go down the list, but Bill Cosby definitely. And you know, some of my close friends in comedy are huge Bill Cosby fans. We've had this argument for years. I feel totally vindicated.
I don't know how this would vindicate you, but But go ahead. It's your opinion on Bill Cosby.
But anyway, look, I think when you're a public figure, you are absolutely a target. We are all just sitting out there. By the way, they referenced you on the newsroom.
Why are you pointing at me? What did I do? No. I heard that.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Which is Aaron Sorkin did a great takedown of social media and how it's irresponsible. And
I was flattered to have been mentioned.
You should have been, yes. And so I'm very wary of saying if somebody accuses somebody that it's true. So, but let's put some perspective in this. Let's look at some other people who've been accused. Woody Allen. Mm-hmm. Woody Allen was accused by one person who had every reason in the world to hate him with the white-hot intensity of 1,000 suns. Right?
Was his now ex-wife.
Right.
Yes.
She accused him of having sex with a child, and I don't think that's true because of what I just said, but it could be. So we'll say that 10% possible. Michael Jackson. Now, Michael Jackson, awesome dancer, great songwriter, unconventional babysitter.
That was going to be the title of his next album.
So, look, he got how many accusers? Two or three?
Something like that.
But he's so weird. And he also always spent time with children. So it's kind of hard to know. He by his own mouth, he said, it's charming to be in bed with children. He said that.
Right.
So I don't know. What I think happened was a little grabby under the covers, which is wrong. It is. That is a crime to grabby. But it's not like, what Catholic priests were doing.
You just heard about this?
Yeah, right. You just heard about
A lot of them are here on vacation.
But it is a crime. But I always said, put that in perspective, because, when I was 12 years old, I was once brutally beaten on the playground by two bullies. One held me down and the other just punched me in the face. And if I could trade that, if I could go back to 1968 and trade that experience for being gently masturbated by a pop star, I would do it in a heartbeat. Frankie Valli could Creedence Clearwater Revival could Marvin Gaye could the Drifters, not the group, just Drifters could still be better than being punched in the face. Okay, so Woody Allen, one accuser. Michael Jackson, 2 or 3.
All right.
Bill Cosby, we do not have a number high enough. I mean, people say he deserves his day in court. Do we have enough time?
He doesn't want a day in court. Yeah, I mean, he deserved. There's no
the
interest
defense
in that.
present accuser number 465, and then the stenographer would like to say a few words because she was groped on the way. And did this man ever meet anyone that he didn't? I mean, and these are women who don't seem to have a reason to lie about it. There's no money in it.
Well, that's not necessarily true because a lot of them seem to be being represented by Gloria Allred, who is in league with the devil. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I heard there was 4 more today. I'm wondering where the number's going to end up. I'm just saying, I think we should be very careful about accusations, but when there's this much smoke, there has got to be a fire somewhere.
Have you invited Bill Cosby to be on your show?
Yeah, that would happen soon.
Didn't want to believe it. At first, I didn't believe it. I was like, man, these people are obviously trying to destroy Dr. Cosby's rich legacy. Even 34 allegations into it, I was still like, man, probably only rate 10 or 11 of those people. I know, but it's really tough. You guys are young, so imagine if you found out 40 years from now that Kevin Hart raped 54 people. You'd be like, oh. The only one that would believe that would be Cat Williams. He'd be like, I knew that motherfucker was up to something.
You terrorize, you torture and provoke me. You exploit and bully my soul. You are the demon, a devil, a monster of your very own. You backstab me when I sit and work. You try to impress our neighbors for business, greed, profit, forever advertising on your self-defense karate school cookbook. Respect is what you try to sell, but everyone knows you're a big bully. Poke my eyes out when I try to sleep. Let's call Mo and Curly. encouraging your students to do the same in a big hurry, to terrorize people of color for confidence, learning, and play. What a big creep. You're driving out minorities from your workplace, neighborhood, street, trying to act cool like you're doing good, the authority of residential zoning and real estate distribution crook, snook, took. Liberate our souls, liberate our freedom, backstab my soul, incarcerate our kingdom, deny us money, deny us freedom, backstab my soul, torture and mislead them, backstab my soul, take away our freedom. You target those who threaten your image, those who you envy, those who know enough to discredit your big belly, camouflaging the attack, cheap shots around the clock in darkness while wearing black. Bedroom terror horror show is what you really sell? Could it be? Training for human trafficking, slavery at my front door bell. Training your armies of white knights, criminalizing your opponents when they do the same. Pimpology has many colors, but the dark ones are the only ones who really pay. Exposing the truth about war, crime at every angle, and never-ending battle of exploitation. Making America the battlefield of love, giving it a bad name forever. Segregations. Romantics have gotta be insane. Psychological accusations of a mental illness worst kind. You're crazy to accuse. Every time we testify, we lose. Even if we know how to rhyme, it is our dark skin that locks the bars around our souls. Incarcerated at birth, even if we steal everything from your Liberation Proclamation store, free bird. Liberate our souls, liberate our freedom, backstab my soul, incarcerate our kingdom, deny us money, deny us freedom, backstab my soul, torture and mislead them, backstab my soul, take away our freedom. Respect is what you try to sell, but everyone knows you're a big bully. Poke my eyes out when I try to sleep, let's call Mo and Curly. Encouraging your students to do the same in a big hurry, to terrorize people of color for confidence, learning, and play. What a big creep. You're driving out minorities from your workplace, neighborhood, street, trying to act cool like you're doing good, the authority of residential zoning and real estate distribution crook, snook, took. Liberate our souls, liberate our freedom, backstab my soul, incarcerate our kingdom, deny us money, deny us freedom, backstab my soul, torture and mislead them, backstab my soul, take away our freedom.
That's Bill Cosby arriving at a Pennsylvania courthouse to be arraigned on sexual assault charges. The legendary comedian appears to have trouble walking. He's holding a cane and stumbles on the curb and has to be held up by his lawyers. When he emerged 13 minutes later, he appeared just as frail. From the courthouse, he was taken to police headquarters where he was fingerprinted and had his mugshot taken. The bombshell news is getting stunned reaction today.
Bill Cosby has been criminally charged with aggravated indecent assault.
The surprise announcement came from the DA of Montgomery County, Pennsylvania.
Mr. Cosby is charged with aggravated indecent assault. This is a felony of the first degree.
This is the criminal complaint with the legendary entertainer comedian's full name, William Henry Cosby, and the charge, aggravated indecent assault. The alleged victim is Andrea Constand, formerly director of operations for Temple University's women's basketball team in Philadelphia. She accused Cosby of assaulting her in 2004.
Mr. Cosby urged her to take pills that he provided to her and to drink wine, the effect of which rendered her unable to move or respond to his advances, and he committed aggravated indecent assault upon her.
Cosby was not charged when the assault allegedly occurred 11 years ago, but he settled a civil suit out of court in 2005 for an undisclosed amount. Earlier this year, the deposition from that lawsuit was unsealed. In it, Cosby admitted giving pills to Andrea Constand to, quote, take the stress away. He also admitted removing her bra and touching her sexually. He says it was consensual.
After examination of all the evidence, we are able to seek justice on behalf of the victim.
Gloria Allred represents 29 of the estimated 50 women who have accused Cosby of assault.
Seeing him criminally charged and having to face a trial is the best Christmas present that they have ever received.
At last, at last, at last.
We spoke to Victoria Valentino, who claims Cosby drugged and raped her in 1970 when she was a Playboy playmate.
Well, I think we feel vindicated and validated, and we are elated.
Cosby was released on $1 million bail and returned to his Pennsylvania home, the scene of the alleged crime. The charge against him was filed in the nick of time. The statute of limitations on the case runs out next month.
A new firestorm surrounds Bill Cosby, but this time it's because of his own words and not the accusations of others. Cosby's confessions about drugs, sex, and young women in newly released documents are eye-opening and leave many feeling betrayed. Here's ABC's Lindsay Davis.
Anything to say to your accusers, Mr. Cosby?
It's a bombshell 1,000-page deposition. In it, Bill Cosby describes the sexual relationship he had with Andrea Constand, who has accused him of drugging and sexually abusing her. Cosby describes one of their sexual encounters, stating, "I don't hear her say anything, so I continue and go to the area that is somewhere between permission and rejection." Cosby describes the encounter as consensual, a romantic evening, dinner by the fireplace, complete with cognac. Cosby says, "I walk her out. She does not look angry. She does not say to me, 'Don't ever do that again.'" The sweeping deposition, taken over a 4-day period at a Philadelphia hotel in 2005, describes Cosby's sexual encounters with at least 5 women, fueling an exploding scandal involving more than 24 women accusing the legendary comedian of abuse.
He flipped me over and sexually assaulted me.
His behavior was like that of a predator.
His testimony, published this weekend, was part of Constand's lawsuit. She accused Cosby of drugging and molesting her inside his home while she was employed at his alma mater, Temple University. In it, he says, "I think that I'm a pretty decent reader of people and their emotions in these romantic sexual things, whatever you want to call them." In the deposition, Cosby's demeanor appearing almost casual to Constand's attorney, who remarked, "I think you're making light of a very serious situation." Cosby replying, "That may very well be."
What we really got to see in this deposition was his attitudes towards the whole thing. He was even chastised by the opposing counsel for not treating it seriously. That's what's really going to hurt him.
Never charged with sexual assault in any of the alleged incidents, Cosby settled the Constand case out of court. A source close to the comedian told ABC News he did so to avoid embarrassment for himself and his family. 2 months ago, I sat down with him for an exclusive interview where he refused to address the allegations directly.
It's interesting. This is a situation that's unprecedented. My family, my friends, I have been in this business 52 years, and I've never seen anything like this. And reality is the situation. And I can't speak.
In a deposition, Cosby admits to obtaining drugs to provide to young women. The attorney asks, when you got the Quaaludes, was it in your mind you were going to use these Quaaludes for young women that you wanted to have sex with? Cosby answers, yes.
Mass incarceration means that we've got a very high rate of incarceration, historically, comparatively. And the other thing is the rate of incarceration is so high, so socially concentrated, that we're no longer incarcerating the individual, but we're incarcerating whole social groups. The rate of incarceration now is about 5 times higher than it was historically. Historically, it was 100 per 100,000. Now it's about 500 per 100,000. If we look at prison, if we add jail to that, it's about 700 per 100,000. Nowhere in the world incarcerates as much as we do. We've seen extremely high rates of exposure to the criminal justice system for African American men with very low levels of schooling. So if we think about black men who were born in the late 1970s and who are growing up through the American prison boom of the 1980s and the 1990s, the chances that they're going to serve time in state or federal prison if they dropped out of high school is about 70%. So going to prison for that group of black men with very low levels of schooling, that's become a normal life event. And that's really only happened in the last 10 years. We're at this point now where there's about 1.2 million African American children with a parent who's incarcerated. And that's about 1 in 9. The research shows the kids who experience parental incarceration have diminished school achievement, they have behavioural problems, depressive symptoms, acting out. And there's also evidence that these kinds of negative effects associated with parental incarceration are concentrated more among boys than among girls. And there's a very real risk here that incarceration becomes an inherited trait. The underlying issue is we've chosen prison as a way to respond to that problem of crime. And there are a whole variety of ways that we could have chosen to respond to that problem of crime. We've chosen the response of the deprivation of liberty. And we've chosen the response of the deprivation of liberty for a historically aggrieved group whose liberty in the United States was never firmly established to begin with.
When I worked at Red Lobster, when I worked at, Odd Lot or Alexander's or, the Daily News, I wasn't working my way through stand-up. It wasn't like, that was my life. It wasn't like a kid working his way through school and they know, okay, when I get out of school, it'll be good. That was my life. If I work at UPS, I'll be really lucky. The day it clicked to me, I went to see a comedian at a Radio City Music Hall. A big, famous comedian at the time. As we're leaving, my brother goes, "You're that good. You're as good as that guy." And it didn't dawn on me that I was so happy to be out of Bed-Stuy. You know what I mean? I was so happy to not be a busboy anymore. I didn't think, I could play Madison Square Garden or any of that stuff. I'm fortunate to come up in the time I've come up in. I've been able to reap the rewards of not only my work, but Richard Pryor's work, Bill Cosby's work, Eddie Murphy's work. I have a picture in one of my offices of Cosby, like a young Cosby with like a fedora and a cigar, like as cool as they come. And if you actually read the Richard Pryor book, Pryor Convictions, every time Cosby shows up in the book, he's actually the coolest guy in the Richard Pryor book. My daughter Lola goes to sleep with a little Bill doll. That's so cool, man. Like, how much I love Cosby, and just like, actually both my daughters sleep with little Bills.
Bill Cosby's wife is speaking out about his conviction. This is mob justice, not real justice, writes Camille Cosby in a blistering statement. The tragedy must be undone, not just for Bill Cosby, but for the country. Camille goes on to say, once again, an innocent person has been found guilty based on an unthinking, unquestioning, unconstitutional frenzy. During the trial, 5 women testified that Cosby drugged and sexually assaulted them. Dozens more have come forward with similar stories.
Next tonight here, an ABC News exclusive, the scandal following Bill Cosby. In her first TV interview, Felicia Rashad, his TV wife on the iconic Cosby Show, now breaking her silence on a day when 3 more women stood before the cameras. Here's ABC's Lindsay Davis with the interview.
For 8 years, she was the wife of America's iconic TV dad. Felicia Rashad describes the Bill Cosby she knows.
He's a genius. He is generous, he's kind, he's inclusive.
Tonight, speaking to ABC News exclusively about her co-star and friend accused by more than a dozen women of sexual assault and impropriety.
What has happened is declaration in the media of guilt without proof.
Earlier this week, her remarks about the women who have come forward created a firestorm.
You were quoted online as saying, forget those women. And that was a misquote. And that is not what I said. What I said is this is not about the women. This is about something else. This is about the obliteration of legacy. Because some people might think that it was dismissive. I am a woman. I am a woman. I would never say such a thing.
But she's under attack today as 3 more women step forward with new accusations against Cosby.
Felicia, you should be supporting these women.
When you first heard women were saying they had been drugged or raped, I had never heard that before. And I can't even speak to those things and don't want to.
Years ago, I interviewed Kwesi Mfume, then the president of the NAACP. As between the presence of white racism and the absence of black fathers, I asked him, which poses the bigger threat to the black community? Without missing a beat, he said, the absence of black fathers. It was President Barack Obama who said, we all know these statistics, that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison. The Journal of Research on Adolescence confirms that even after controlling for varying levels of household income, kids in father-absent homes are more likely to end up in jail. And kids who never had a father in the house are the most likely to wind up behind bars. In 1960, 5% of America's children entered the world without a mother and father married to each other. By 1980, it was 18%. By 2000, it had risen to 33%, and 15 years later, the number reached 41%. For blacks, even during slavery, when marriage for slaves was illegal, black children were more likely than today to be raised by both their mother and father. Economist Walter Williams has written that, according to census data from 1890 to 1940, a black child was more likely to grow up with married parents than a white child. For blacks, out-of-wedlock births have gone from 25% in 1965 to 73% in 2015. For whites, from less than 5% to over 25%, and for Hispanics, out-of-wedlock births have risen to 53%. What happened to fathers?
To be a parent and a coach. My dad taught himself tennis. He decided one day he wanted to learn, so he bought a magazine, he bought video, he bought books. He taught my mom, and then they taught us. And he wasn't a spring chicken when he taught himself. I mean, he was, I'm not gonna say how old he was, because then people that age would probably be offended. We stopped playing juniors because, I mean, my dad saw all these parents. It's like the parents have so much pressure on their kids, and they're so overbearing, and they're yelling at their kids. You know, I mean, most of these kids never even made on the circuit. It wasn't that serious. So he wanted us to not be a part of an environment like that and just live as normal lives as we could, just training. You know, we didn't need to be in tournament play. And he also thought that we would get burned out. Like, okay, if you play all these junior events, when you finally get to the professionals, it's like you'll be tired of playing. It wouldn't be anything new. Venus definitely opened a lot of doors for me because she was first. You know, for me, it was like the Red Sea. You know, she parted it and I just kind of walked through. Like, I'll be like, okay, Venus, I'm playing so-and-so. Oh, hit to her backhand and then hit a slice and come in and all you have to do is put it away. And I'm like, gosh, how do you know all these players? I speak to all my sisters every day. So we all grew up in one room because we lived in Compton, and there was a 2-bedroom house. My mom wanted all us girls to be strong black women and really powerful black women, and not to let anyone run over us in any way, shape, or form. And my mom is the ultimate strong woman, and like, I don't think I could ever be what she was and what she is. If I could just be half of that, I would be an amazing woman. I said once, I'm the most underestimated 8-time Grand Slam champion ever. Every article that I do read, it's like, you know, she overpowered her opponent. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, well, they don't even know how hard I can really hit, because I'm telling you, I'm not hitting the ball as hard as I can. It's a lot more than just hitting the ball as hard as you can. It's all about strategy and moving your opponent and just really figuring them out. Like, I never get credit for mental. And I think that's it's kind of frustrating. But at the end of the day, I'm very happy with me and I'm very happy with my results. When you train for something for your whole life, you're pretty much ready for it.
Eddie Murphy revolutionized acting. No one says that, but he really did. I just remember the way black guys used to act before 48 hours. And there was a sidekick way of acting that Murphy didn't incorporate. In Beverly Hills Cop, I don't know, it was just so effortless. And it's almost not acting, you know what I mean? Before that, black men would, it's very earnest and, I'm representing my race. And Murph kind of just made it, hey, I'm Axel, here's my badge, what's going on? The thing that black culture is missing, it's not the comedian thing. Somebody will be that guy. The real question is, when are one of these black girls gonna get their Streisand on? It's like, yo, I'm really about to set it off. I'm writing a movie, I'm directing a movie, I'm starring a movie. I can't wait to meet her. I can't wait to work with her. I can't wait till I meet the female, Tyler Perry. That's gonna be the next level. In my neighborhood, there's like 3-4 black people in my neighborhood in Alpine. And, it's me, Gary Sheffield, Mary J. Blige, Patrick Ewing. Hall of Famer, greatest R&B singer of our time, decent comedian. Who lives to me? What's the white man next to me? He's a dentist. He didn't invent anything, he's just a dentist. That's what America is. My dad used to say this. You can't beat white people at anything. Never. But you can knock them out. Like, if you have 6 and the white guy has 5, he wins. If you're black, you can't let it go to the judge's decision, because you're gonna lose, no matter how bad you beat this man up. Larry Holmes, Jerry Cooney is the perfect example of life. Larry Holmes beats the shit out of this guy for 11 rounds. He knocks him out in the 11th round. They had to stop the fight. The man is bloody. He's been beaten the whole fight. They go to the judges' scorecards. Larry Holmes is losing the fight. If he didn't knock him out, he would have lost the title. And that is essentially the black experience. You're always black. There's always gonna kind of be an overreaction one way or the other regarding your presence, be it good or bad. Just when you let Jackie Robinson in baseball, that doesn't mean it's equal. Baseball statistically isn't equal almost until the 70s. And why do I say the 70s? Because that's when you started to see bad black baseball players. The true equality is the equality to like the white man. That's really Martin Luther King's dream coming true. Is guys suck it. I watch the Oscars. Okay, these are the people that made the good movies. What about the people that made the bad movies? That's most of the industry. I want to be like that. Not that I want to be bad, but I want the license to be bad. Come back and learn.
Proliferation of baby mamas. The disintegration of the nuclear family has led to an astronomical increase of single mother households. According to the Moynihan Report, in 1965, nearly 25% of black children were born to unwed mothers. The report's author, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, said this was a disaster in the making. He was, of course, vilified by so-called black leaders and their progressive allies. But he was right. Today, the out-of-wedlock birth rate is nearly 75% and even higher in some urban areas. To be clear, baby daddies share this responsibility with baby mamas. Yet, while baby daddies are blamed and rarely shown compassion, baby mamas are rarely blamed and receive both compassion and support.
We are now going to, for the balance of the transmission, look at the IRS scandal. And we're going to look at it from within the organization. Again, Joe Bannister heard a radio show back in, 1997 in California. For the next 2 years, he researched it. He was an armed Treasury agent, the type they send out with the IRS to raid your house. And he heard that the IRS collected money for the private Federal Reserve. He heard none of it went to run the country. He heard it was all a fraud, that the elites didn't pay the tax, which is now admitted. And he said, I respect this talk show host. I'm going to go disprove this and then demand to be on the show, basically. I was the first person to go interview him. I went out and interviewed him in California. First person for video was, I think at first it was at Media Bypass, Media Bypass. Did the first interview. And the point is, and that's in one of my documentaries, and then they twice tried to put him in jail. So he said, I need a response to this. And they just said, nah, just give us your resignation, just for asking. Now, Sherry Peel Jackson was part of the national ads that were put together by We the People in USA Today. And she was a fraud investigator. She spoke out. They arrested her. And they found a jury to put her in jail. Just absolutely disgusting. She's a former certified public accountant and fraud examiner with 28 years experience in public, private, and governmental accounting. Ms. Jackson conducts basic and advanced financial education seminars and classes across the U.S. She was instructed financial survival classes for various organizations, including private companies, youth groups, and nonprofit groups. She's also a Christian author and speaker. She was thrust in the national spotlight for taking a stand against government fraud and theft and landed in federal prison for 3 years. While behind bars, Ms. Jackson experienced God like never before. She's such a nice lady. I interviewed her before she was sent to prison. She used her time in prison to form a spiritually intimate relationship with the Lord, minister to other inmates, and write several books and journals. Ms. Jackson's first 4 books are currently being published and will be available for distribution in September 2012. They are coming out on time next month. She formed Wake the People International Ministry to bring a candid Christian worldview to social and political area and to provide a counterpoint to mainstream media. Ms. Jackson lives in Stone Mountain, Georgia, with her husband, Colin. She has 2 grown children. Ms. Jackson lectures on several topics: the deception of dismantling of the U.S. and other countries, the reality of modern-day slavery, the American prison system, the detention, the deterioration of the American backbone, the violation of citizens' rights, the silencing of the church, the destruction of the family, the financial crisis, real or created, solutions to our current predicament. SherryPeelJackson.org is the website, SherryPeelJackson.org. And I pre-order a book. It's coming out next month. And when I start getting tears in my eyes when I have somebody on like her, because they put her in prison for no reason for the truth. And these IRS agents that have come out and are now whistleblowing, they'll end up getting killed or something. I mean, that's how evil this system is, where they're handing out citizens' IDs so they can be set up and have their identity stolen for illegal aliens. I mean, the same government shipping guns to Mexico to blame the Second Amendment. They are so evil. Tell us about your journey, Sherry, at the IRS, when you woke up, what you did, and the fact that they tried to put basically everybody who was in those USA Today full-page ads in prison. Some were sent, some beat it. I mean, you're just modern-day heroes. I mean, you went to prison for 3 years because of your Christian faith not allowing you to be involved in evil. And if more people just stood up like you did, nobody'd have to go to prison. We'd turn this around. But it's people like you that we all stand on your shoulders. Sherry Peel Jackson, I salute your courage. Tell us in the next 3-4 minutes before we go to break about yourself, your journey, your awakening. We'll come back, talk about prison, and then we'll look at the latest IRS fraud from an expert fraud investigator. What's happening? Sherry Peel Jackson, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Alex, for having me on your show. I really appreciate you for everything that you've done. I actually did not learn about the fraud until after I left. I left the IRS in '95 because, as a Christian mother, I felt like I was putting too much time into what was going on outside of the household. So I came home to be Jim Cleaver. And at that point, I guess people felt freer to ask me questions. In the years 1999 and 2000, people were asking a lot of questions about, is this income tax real? And it got to the point where pastors were asking me. So I started trying to do research, found out about the USA Today, the first ad that We the People put out. And within that ad was a challenge, a $50,000 challenge for anybody to prove that Americans, people that work and live within the 50 states, are liable for the income tax. So, $50,000 to me, pretty good amount of money. And started doing research, and a couple of weeks later, I was stuck. I still had my codes and regulations and all these things in front of me, but I wasn't finding what I needed to win that $50,000. And the thing that really woke me up and snapped the light on was actually the Federal Reserve being not federal and them collecting $40 million an hour in interest from the American people. And I thought about, wait a minute, this is slavery. So I started digging more and ended up finding out about We the People and Joe Bannister, and everything went on from there.
And then they set you up and threw you in prison.
Yeah, well, I became more than a low-flying gnat at that point, especially the late, great Aaron Russo's movie, America, Freedom, and Fascism. When that came out, I guess that really set them off.
By the way, that was seen by about 50 million people conservatively. That was a big deal.
Great. I was hearing that people over in the Middle East, our soldiers over there, have been seeing the movie. As a matter of fact, when I was in the prison, I got letters from soldiers. They blessed my heart because they are becoming aware of what's really happening here in our country. So I started researching, and to this day, I have not found that. I found a lot of other stuff, like, the Federal Reserve is the one that's in charge, the banksters, and they're collecting millions of dollars in interest from the American people every day, and that's where the tax money goes. It doesn't go towards fixing the roads or the schools or the policemen and the firemen or any of that. So it was a long road of education, but it was a decision that needed to be made. Am I going to keep this to myself, or am I going to tell people? And I felt like the people needed to know, and they needed to be able to make decisions for themselves what they were going to do about it. Now, because I never did tell people to file or not to file or to pay or not to pay, then they never did find any felony charges for me. So they actually locked me up they actually convicted me on a misdemeanor and gave me a 4-year sentence, of which I served 3 years. They had to give me 6 months good time and 6 months halfway house just because they had to. But they kept me in there to the day for 3 years because you can do all kinds of things around here if it doesn't have to do with the money. But when you start messing with these folks and the money, if they don't care whether you're a homeschooling mother and that you've never had a record or any of that, they'll sit you down, and that's what happened. But that's okay because, and still I rise.
Thing that keeps countries poor, culture, what goes on in people's minds, their outlooks and beliefs. A striking statistic pops up here in relation to religion. If there's one generalization you can make about religion and wealth, it's that the less people believe, the richer they stand a chance of being. 19 of the richest countries in the world have 70% or more of their populations saying that religion is not at all important to them. The exception here is, unsurprisingly, the United States, which manages to combine great religiosity with huge wealth. More on that in a second. And conversely, the poorest nations in the world are also extremely believing ones. Here's how many people think religion and the supernatural is deeply important in the following countries. In the world's poorest country, simply everyone is a believer. Why is belief quite so bad for wealth creation? Because in general, religiosity is connected up with the idea that the here and now can't be improved, so you should focus on the spiritual and look forward to a next world instead. It makes quite a bit of sense when you live here. In the rich world, on the other hand, people are generally great believers in their capacity to alter their destiny through effort and talent. Incidentally, to explain the anomaly of the United States, religion seems not to slow down economic growth here because it's a particular sort of religion, an overwhelmingly Protestant and exceptionally materialistic kind. The American God doesn't want you to think of building the New Jerusalem in the next world. He wants it here and now, in Kansas or Houston.
It seems bizarre to have to ask the question, does America have a race problem? All the evidence says yes. But not everyone in the US agrees. Surveys consistently show that while most black people believe race is an issue, most white people don't. A divergence of opinion that existed even at the height of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Most white people didn't understand what Martin Luther King was trying to do. So, I'm going on a journey into the mind of white America. It could be a bumpy ride, according to Talk Radio.
The value in black life, given the illegitimacy rate, out-of-wedlock rate, is far higher than that of the rest of the society. The reason that people have children before they marry is values, not poverty.
Blacks are stupid. That is correct. They are blinded by anger at whites.
You don't need to say white lives matter, because white people don't walk up to white people, put a gun to their head and blow them away.
I didn't want to talk to any African Americans for this film. Discrimination is obviously a black issue, but when you think about it, it's mainly a white problem. So I set my own color bar.
Bam, 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 bam. And you know it's coming from those areas. And then the next day the news will come on, and sure enough, there was a shooting of some young black man.
I'm part of the problem. Because I don't know how to solve the problem, and so what do? I ignore it.
After a while, the race card has been played so much that it has lost its value.
If you think racism doesn't exist, you're white.
I don't know. White privilege. I just don't see it. You know what you need? What are these?
White privilege glasses. Helps you see the world the way we do.
Good morning, Wisconsin. You're listening to News Radio 620 WTMJ. I'm Charlie Sykes.
This is one of the most important men in right-wing talk radio in Wisconsin. Charlie Sykes has a legion of listeners, and most are white, suburban, and Republican. Do you think many of your listeners understand the concept of white privilege? Have they come across that idea?
I think they've heard the term. I don't think they fully grasp it. I'm not sure that I fully grasp it. I actually had a caller the other day who asked me about that, and I asked him to try to define it.
And the caller did a pretty good job.
Well, I've noticed that I have a few African-American friends. One of my good friends, he's been pulled over at least 15 times, and I have never been pulled over before.
Okay, so that you think that is your white privilege? Maybe it's because, I don't know, just the theory here, you don't speed, you don't violate traffic laws. Is that possible?
He doesn't do any of those things.
All right. One of the things that we're seeing in American politics is you have a lot of white, working class, poor people who do not feel that they are privileged because of their race.
So, as far as you're concerned, there is no such thing as white privilege? It doesn't exist?
No, there's white privilege. There's all kinds of privilege. There's a reluctance to go back to the racialization of all of these issues. I mean, we do have an African-American president in this country. After a while, the race card has been played so much that it has lost.
We've all heard about how many bad things the U.S. government did to American Indians in the past. But what about today? Like most people, the only time I hear about today's American Indians is when people are outraged about sports mascots or team names, like the Washington Redskins. But sports teams' names are the least of Indians' problems. Did you know that Indians have the highest rate of poverty of any racial group in America? Did you know that alcoholism is more common among Indian youths than among youths in any other ethnic group? Did you know that the rate of child abuse among Indians is twice as high as the national average? Until I visited Indian reservations for my book, The New Trail of Tears, I didn't know any of this. What was at the root of these terrible problems, I wondered? And the deeper I dug, the more I realized that between the 19th century and today, nothing has changed. It's still the government. The two main agencies that oversee the activities of Indians who live on reservations are the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or BIA, and the Bureau of Indian Education, or BIE. Education, economic development, tribal courts, road maintenance, agriculture, and social services, the federal government basically funds and controls all of it. It's no wonder Indians say BIA stands for Bossing Indians Around. Together, these two agencies have combined budgets of $3 billion per year and have 9,000 employees. That's one employee for every 111 Indians on a reservation. Of that $3 billion per year, the BIE uses $850 million of it to educate 42,000 students. That's more than $20,000 per student, compared to a national average of $12,400 per student. Plenty of other federal agencies also have programs for Indians. For instance, the Indian Health Service had a 2015 budget of over $4.6 billion. And yet there are widespread and documented reports of nurses being unable to administer basic drugs, of broken resuscitation equipment, and of unsanitary medical facilities. Obviously, inadequate funding isn't the problem. The billions of dollars that the federal government spends on Indians every year hasn't made their lives better. In fact, by most measures of economic and social health, the lives of American Indians are only getting worse. Aside from issues of culture, the only way out of this morass is economic growth. But the reservation system makes this almost impossible. Following a series of treaties and laws over many decades, some well-intentioned, some not, the federal government decided to hold Indian land, quote, in trust, in order to prevent non-Indians from ever buying that land. But other than Indians, the only people who have things held in trust for them are children and the mentally incompetent. Can anything better illustrate the low regard the government has for American Indians? The awful consequence of this land trust is that Indians can't sell their land, which means they can't use it the same way other Americans do. For example, as collateral to get a loan to start a business. What bank would lend to landowners who don't own their land? The other effect of this absurdity is that Indians can't develop this land that they don't own. Indian reservations contain almost 30% of the nation's coal reserves west of the Mississippi, 50% of potential uranium reserves, and 20% of known oil and gas reserves. Those resources are estimated to be worth nearly $1.5 trillion. But the vast majority of Indian lands with natural resources remain undeveloped because of federal regulations. For instance, for Indians to get permission to mine for coal on Indian land requires 49 steps spanning 4 federal agencies. Each of these 49 steps can take months or years to be approved. There are so many government regulations that just to apply for a permit to dig a hole cost $6,500.
There are 196 countries in the world. 25 of them are very rich, defined as having an average wealth per person of over $100,000 a year. They are. But far more countries are quite poor, and some, which we're considering here, are very, very poor. These are the 20 poorest countries in the world, where the per capita wealth is under $1,000 a year, or under $3 a day. Every country is now more or less on a path to growth, but the poor ones are growing very, very slowly. If Zimbabwe continues at its current growth rate, it will qualify as a rich country in 2,722 years. What we want to know in this film is why some countries prosper and others stagnate, so that we can understand what rich countries are doing right and get a better grip on the challenges and hurdles facing poor countries. There are basically 3 factors that determine whether a country will be rich or poor. The first is institutions. Institutions are beyond important. Broadly speaking, rich countries have good institutions and poor ones have very, very bad ones. The correlation between poverty and corruption is direct. The richest countries in the world are quite simply invariably also the least corrupt ones. And the most corrupt countries are also the poorest. When countries are corrupt, they can't collect enough taxes to get the good institutions they would need to escape the poverty trap. Half of the wealth of the world's poorest 20 countries goes into offshore accounts. Lost revenues in these countries totals between $10 and $20 billion a year. Meanwhile, without an adequate tax base, poor countries can't invest in police, education, health, and transport. Now, a more generous way to look at corruption is that it's really a case of clan-based thinking. Say you're hiring someone. In the rich countries, you're meant to do so simply on merit, interviewing lots of candidates, then picking the best one, irrespective of any personal connection. But in poor countries, under the sway of clan-based thinking, that approach would itself be seen as corrupt. It's your duty to disregard the so-called best candidate from an anonymous bunch in order to pick someone from your own team, your uncle, your brother, your second cousin, the guys from the same tribe. As a result, poor countries don't allow themselves access to the intelligence and talent of the whole population.
Stormy, this is Michael Cohen. Are you alone?
Yes?
And what are you wearing?
Excuse me?
Okay, Michael, I can take it from here. Okay, but as your attorney, I highly advise against you to... So what up, girl?
Hello, Donald.
Come on, Stormy, stop making such a big deal about this. Everyone knows it's just an act.
I work in adult films. We're not really known for our acting.
Just tell me, what do you need for this to all go away?
A resignation?
Yeah, right. Being president is like doing porn. Once you do it, it's hard to do anything else.
They are all false. They're totally invented. Fiction. All 100% totally and completely fabricated. Never met this person, these people. I don't know who they are. I don't know who they are. Think of what's happening to our country. Think of what's happening. I don't know who these people are. I look on television. I think it's a disgusting thing, and it's being pushed. They have no witnesses. There's nobody around. They just come out. Some are doing it for probably a little fame. They get some free fame. It's a total setup. Now suddenly, after many, many years, phony accusers come out less than a month before one of the most important elections in the history of our country. It also comes at a time as WikiLeaks unveils horrible, horrible things about Hillary Clinton. But they'd rather talk about this. Somebody that you've never seen that said, oh, in 1992, he went like this. One came out recently where I was sitting alone in some club. I really don't sit alone that much. Honestly, folks, I don't think I sit alone. I go in with groups of people. I was sitting alone by myself, like this. And then I went, wow. To somebody. I just heard this one. It's like unbelievable. Even a simple investigation would have shown these allegations against me. In just about all cases, it's nonsense. It's false.
Donald Trump was caught on a hot mic in 2005, bragging in vulgar language about kissing, groping, and trying to have sex with a married woman.
I did try. I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where they have some nice furniture.
It happened on board a bus in a conversation with Today Show co-host Billy Bush, who was then co-host of the TV show Access Hollywood. The Washington Post uncovered audio and video, which is now threatening to throw a major curveball into the Trump campaign.
It's kind of stunning to hear the Republican nominee, father of five, married to Melania Trump, a person who won handily the evangelical vote,
yes.
Talk this crudely about women.
As the bus pulls into a TV studio to film a guest appearance on Days of Our Lives, Trump and Bush notice soap actress Ariana Zucker.
I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the can do anything.
Trump is now issuing a rare apology, saying this was locker room banter, a private conversation that took place many years ago. Bill Clinton has said far worse to me on the golf course, not even close. I apologize if anyone was offended.
In Trump's world, we're supposed to believe the very compelling claims of Leanne Tweeden, to whom we spoke extensively on this show yesterday. But we are not supposed to believe these women, at least 12 women, who have brought forward claims on the record about President Trump's past behavior, alleging actions ranging from sexual harassment to sexual misconduct to, in some cases, sexual assault, spanning the 1980s to the 2000s. Jessica Drake said in a press conference that Donald Trump hugged her, kissed her without consent, and offered her money to go out with him. Summer Zervos, a contestant on The Apprentice, accused President Trump of harassing her on multiple occasions, including kissing her, quote, very aggressively and placing his hand on her chest without her consent. Jessica Leeds told the New York Times that during a flight he sat next to her, lifted the armrest, and began to grab her breasts and put his hands up her skirt. Mindy McGillivray told the Palm Beach Post that Trump groped her at Mar-a-Lago. Quote, I was startled. I jumped, she said. Rachel Crooks, who worked in the Trump Tower, told the New York Times that Trump kissed her on the cheeks and her mouth without consent. People magazine Natasha Stoynoff claims Donald Trump pushed her against a wall and forced his tongue down her throat. A former Miss Utah, Temple Taggart, claims Mr. Trump gave her a non-consensual embrace and kissed her on the lips during a pageant rehearsal against her wishes and repeated the behavior later at a Trump Tower meeting. Kristen Anderson says in a crowded Manhattan club, Donald Trump reached up her miniskirt and touched her genitals through her underwear. Kathy Heller claims that President Trump forcibly kissed her at a Mother's Day brunch at Mar-a-Lago. Former Miss Finland, Nini Laaksonen, said Mr. Trump grabbed her buttocks before a joint appearance on The Late Show. Karina Virginia said in a press conference that President Trump touched the side of her breasts before allegedly asking, "Don't you know who I am?" And Jill Harth says Mr. Trump made unwanted sexual advances toward her, including groping her under her skirt on 2 different occasions. Now, the Trump campaign issued statements denying those claims, and of course, then candidate Trump himself had this to say.
Every woman lied when they came forward to hurt my campaign. Total fabrication. The events never happened. Never. All of these liars will be sued after the election is over.
Needless to say, President Trump has filed exactly 0 lawsuits against any of his accusers. In fact, the only lawsuit filed in all of this has been from one of those accusers, Summer Zervos, for defamation of her character, a suit against him. A few weeks ago, when the accusations against Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein were made public, the president said he was, quote, not surprised. In response, the White House was asked about its position regarding Mr. Trump's many accusers. And the White House press secretary, whose salary you taxpayers pay, stood by that line while standing at the podium from the People's House saying, all these women are liars.
Is the official White House position that all of these women are lying?
Yeah, we've been clear on that from the beginning, and the president's spoken on it.